Miyamoto Musashi is remembered as a man who lived by his own principles, a wandering swordsman, a strategist, a thinker shaped by conflict and strengthened by solitude. He was undefeated in more than 60 duels, but his teachings reach far beyond the edge of a blade. In this video, you'll hear the principles Musashi refined through a lifetime of discipline. Ideas forged through hardship, sharpened by reflection, and written down so that others might follow a clearer path. These teachings are direct, simple, uncompromising, and they reveal the mindset of a man who mastered not only combat, but the deeper art of living with purpose. Let's begin. Musashi believed that a person's greatest enemy is not another man, but their own hesitation. He wrote that a mind divided cannot move with certainty. That doubt slows the hand, and fear clouds judgment. To Musashi, clarity was power. Not the kind of clarity that appears briefly in moments of inspiration, but the clarity built through repetition, discipline, and honest self-assessment. He taught that a person must know their strengths without arrogance and face their weaknesses without denial. Because the moment you refuse to see yourself clearly, you've already lost the fight. Musashi's life shows that strength begins with truth. Not comfort, not pride, just truth. Musashi wrote often about simplicity, not as an aesthetic, but as a weapon. He believed most people suffer because they cling to what is unnecessary. Extra possessions, extra opinions, extra noise. A warrior, he said, should cut away the excess until only the essential remains. This wasn't minimalism, it was efficiency. A mind unburdened by clutter moves faster, decides quicker, and sees opportunities others miss. Musashi lived with almost nothing. Not because he lacked resources, but because he refused to depend on anything that weakened the spirit. He believed that when you rely on less, you become more. Musashi never trusted comfort. He believed comfort softens the mind long before it weakens the body. Discomfort, on the other hand, reveals truth. He trained in harsh environments, slept little, traveled alone, and pushed beyond convenience intentionally. Not because he enjoyed suffering, but because he understood that a person who can function under discomfort becomes unshakable when conditions improve. He believed that comfort is a slow enemy, quiet, gentle, and incredibly effective. A warrior, he said, must stay awake to it. Musashi taught that victory is won before the battle begins. To him, preparation wasn't optional. It was the foundation. He spent years practicing footwork, posture, awareness, and mental control, not glamorous skills, but essential ones. He believed most people lose because they only train when motivated, or only work hard when watched, or only prepare when pressure builds. Musashi prepared relentlessly. Quietly, consistently, when nobody cared and when nobody saw. He believed that excellence is built in private long before it's recognized in public. And in his view, that's where true strength forms. Musashi believed that a person should observe everything and depend on nothing. He trained himself to notice details others ignored, shifts in posture, changes in tone, movements at the edge of his vision. To Musashi, awareness wasn't a skill. It was a lifestyle. He wrote that most people look but do not see. They hear but do not listen. A warrior, he said, pays attention to what the moment is actually telling them, not what they expect, not what they want, what is. And once you begin to see what's truly in front of you, your decisions become sharper, cleaner, and far more effective. Musashi taught that a person should never take a shortcut in training. He understood that skill built on shortcuts collapses under pressure. Only discipline survives the moments that matter. He practiced fundamentals until they became instinct, the angle of a blade, the spacing of a step, the timing of a strike. Mastery, he believed, was not found in advanced techniques, but in perfecting the basics beyond what others consider reasonable. In Musashi's view, shortcuts create weakness. Discipline creates freedom. Because when the moment comes and everything is on the line, the body falls back to whatever it practiced most. For Musashi, that foundation was flawless. Musashi valued adaptability above almost everything. He wrote that a rigid man breaks easily. A flexible one survives. He fought with two swords when others insisted on one. He changed tactics mid-duel. He learned from every opponent, every environment, every unexpected moment. Musashi believed that clinging to a single method blinds a person, but seeing from many angles reveals the truth more clearly. He taught that a warrior must be fluid, able to shift strategy instantly, without hesitation, without fear. Adaptability, he said, is the mark of a mind that is truly alive. Musashi often wrote about presence, the ability to fully inhabit the moment. He noticed how the mind drifts, forward into worry, backward into memory. He believed that strength requires attention. Real attention, the kind that isn't divided, or scattered, or tangled in a dozen unrelated thoughts. Presence sharpens perception. It steadies the hand, it clears the mind. Musashi knew that when you are truly present, you respond with accuracy, you move with intention. You see with clarity. He believed the present moment is the only place where skill, wisdom, and action can actually meet. Musashi's final teaching, written near the end of his life, was simple: think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. He wasn't telling people to be weak. He was reminding them that ego distorts everything. When you think too highly of yourself, you stop learning, you stop listening, you stop growing. But when you look outward, toward skill, toward nature, toward the truth itself, your mind becomes clearer, your actions become cleaner, and your path becomes easier to see. Musashi believed that humility was not softness, but strength of the highest form. Because a person who thinks lightly of themselves can move without fear, without pride, and without illusion. Musashi believed that a person should train to remain unmoved by the emotions of others. He watched how people react instantly to anger, approval, pressure, or praise. He noticed that when another person's emotions control you, your direction is no longer your own. Musashi taught that a steady mind doesn't ignore emotion, it simply refuses to be steered by it. He believed that a warrior should be calm when others panic, quiet when others shout, and deliberate when others rush. Not out of coldness, but out of strength. Musashi wrote that a person must learn to see both the small and the large at the same time. He called it broad vision, the ability to notice details without losing sight of the overall situation. Most people, he said, focus too closely. They see the immediate moment but not the consequences. Or they look too far ahead and ignore what's right in front of them. Musashi believed the mind must move between the two seamlessly. See the detail. See the whole, and hold both in balance. A narrow mind misses opportunity, a scattered mind misses danger. A balanced mind sees everything. Musashi lived by the principle of self-reliance. Not isolation, but responsibility. He believed a person should carry their own weight, their own discipline, their own learning, their own choices. He wrote that relying on others for motivation weakens the spirit. Waiting for encouragement slows progress. Depending on praise creates chains. Musashi taught that strength grows when you stand on your own feet, make your own decisions, and accept the outcome without excuses. Self-reliance to him wasn't about pride. It was about freedom. One of Musashi's quieter teachings is the idea that life is training. Not just the battlefield, not just the practice hall. Everything. He believed that every conversation, every obstacle, every moment of frustration, every moment of calm was an opportunity to sharpen the mind. A warrior, he said, should pay attention to how they wake, how they walk, how they respond to difficulty, how they spend their time. He believed that skills are not built in isolation, they are shaped by how you choose to live every day. To Musashi, training never ends, because life never stops teaching. Musashi believed that a person should aim to be useful. Not impressive. Not admired. Useful. He valued people who could solve problems, stay composed under pressure, and contribute something real. He wrote that a person who only seeks recognition is already lost, because their direction comes from the outside. But a person who seeks usefulness builds strength that lasts. To Musashi, being useful meant developing skill, improving character, and making decisions that help, not harm, the world around you. He believed usefulness was the quiet measure of greatness. Musashi taught that skill without intention is empty. He saw warriors who practiced endlessly but never asked themselves why. People who worked hard but not toward anything of value. Musashi believed that effort must have direction, purpose, a reason that carries weight. He wrote that a person should understand their aim not just in combat but in life. Without purpose, he said, skill becomes a distraction. But with purpose, every action becomes meaningful. Intention gives strength its shape. Musashi valued silence. To him, silence was not emptiness. It was clarity. He noticed that people talk to fill space, hide uncertainty, avoid thought. But silence reveals truth. It forces a person to face their own mind, their motivations, their fears. Musashi practiced long stretches of quiet, not as meditation in the modern sense, but as a sharpening of awareness. In silence, he could observe more, understand more, decide more clearly. He believed a calm mind speaks softly because it doesn't need volume to be heard. Musashi taught that pain is information, not something to fear, but something to learn from. He believed physical struggle builds resilience, and emotional struggle builds insight. He wrote that pain shows where your limits are, where your attachments lie, where your weaknesses hide. Ignoring pain, he said, blinds you. But studying it, understanding it, and moving through it creates transformation. To Musashi, pain was a teacher, harsh but honest. Musashi believed that a person must learn to act without hesitation. Not recklessly, but decisively. He saw how doubt paralyzes people, making them slow, uneasy, uncertain. In combat, hesitation was fatal. In life, it was equally dangerous. It cost opportunities, time, momentum. Musashi trained his mind to cut through indecision, to see the options clearly, choose one, and commit fully. He believed that once a direction is chosen, all energy should move toward it. Action, he said, is where strength reveals itself. Musashi wrote that a person should never become predictable. He noticed how opponents repeat themselves, the same responses, the same habits, the same strategies. Predictability allowed him to defeat warriors far stronger on paper because he could see their patterns long before they acted. A flexible mind, he said, breaks patterns intentionally, changes rhythm, shifts direction, does the unexpected. Musashi believed that unpredictability creates an advantage that brute strength cannot overcome. He taught that a warrior should be steady in principle, but fluid in strategy, predictable in values, but unpredictable in execution. Musashi believed that weapons were extensions of the mind. He wrote that a sword is only as strong as the hand that guides it, and the hand is only as strong as the mind that commands it. He noticed how people chase better tools but neglect the judgment required to use them. Musashi taught that a person should develop the mind first, clarity, discipline, presence, and then allow their tools, whatever they are, to follow. He believed that a strong mind makes even simple tools effective, and a weak mind makes even the finest tools useless. Musashi valued endurance. Not just physical stamina, but mental stamina, the ability to remain committed long after motivation fades. He wrote that success often belongs not to the fastest or the strongest, but to the one who continues when others stop. Musashi believed that endurance reveals character. When exhaustion strips away comfort, what remains is the truth of who you are. He trained himself to keep moving when his body resisted, when his mind complained, when circumstances turned against him. Endurance, he said, is quiet strength, the kind people underestimate until it outlasts them. Musashi taught that a person must understand the difference between what is difficult and what is impossible. He noticed that people often give up the moment effort becomes uncomfortable, but Musashi believed difficulty is simply resistance, a signal that you're crossing into territory most people never reach. The impossible, he said, is rare. True limits are far beyond what the average person ever discovers. Musashi's life was defined by pushing past difficulty until it became normal, and expanding possibility until others believed it was effortless. He believed that difficulty is not a wall. It is a gate. Musashi believed that a warrior should understand death, not obsess over it, not fear it. He wrote that when a person accepts the reality of mortality, they gain freedom. Fear of loss fades. Fear of embarrassment fades. Fear of failure fades. Musashi taught that understanding death allows a person to live more clearly, to make better decisions, to value time, and to act without hesitation. He believed that only those who accept death can truly focus on life. Musashi wrote that a person should not seek comfort from others when facing hardship, not because others cannot help, but because reliance weakens resolve. He believed a person must hold their own ground, stand firm, face the difficulty, and build strength from within. Musashi accepted help when necessary, but he never depended on it. He believed that inner stability comes from carrying your own burdens and learning from the weight of them. To him, resilience was a personal responsibility. Musashi valued calm aggression, not rage, not chaos. A controlled, focused force directed at the right moment. He believed that aggression without control was dangerous, but aggression with discipline was the heart of effective action. Calm aggression is confidence. It is commitment. It is the ability to act decisively without losing clarity. Musashi trained himself to move with intensity while keeping the mind still. Musashi believed that a person must learn to move first in the mind before they move in the body. He wrote that action begins with intention, a clear internal decision made before any physical motion takes place. A divided mind creates slow hands. A scattered mind creates clumsy steps. But a unified mind, one thought, one direction, one goal, moves naturally and without excess. Musashi believed that the mind should lead and the body should follow. When the mind is decisive, the body moves with certainty. Musashi taught that a person should avoid becoming emotional in victory. He saw how triumph makes people careless, celebrating too early, relaxing too deeply, forgetting that success is fragile. He believed victory is simply another moment, not a destination. When the battle is won, the work still continues, the refinement of skill, the sharpening of awareness, the strengthening of character. Musashi carried himself with calm even in triumph because he understood that pride blinds judgment. Victory, he said, should make you disciplined, not arrogant. Musashi believed a person should study their opponent as closely as they studied themselves. He watched posture, timing, breathing, confidence, hesitation. He saw patterns within behavior and used those patterns to gain advantage. But he also believed that every opponent teaches you something: patience, speed, strategy, or humility. Musashi wrote that a warrior grows by understanding both sides of the conflict. Knowing yourself gives clarity. Knowing others gives insight. Together they create mastery. Musashi believed that hesitation grows from overthinking. He wrote that once a decision is made, the mind should no longer debate it. Too much thinking weakens resolve. It drains momentum. It invites fear. Musashi acted with total commitment. His thoughts were calm, but his decisions were firm. He believed that certainty comes not from having perfect knowledge, but from trusting your preparation and moving with conviction. A hesitant mind does not lead. A decisive mind does. Musashi warned against seeking admiration. He saw how easily people chase praise, changing their behavior to impress, to gain approval, to feel valued. He believed this weakens a person because their worth becomes dependent on the reactions of others. Musashi lived simply and quietly. He avoided displays of ego and focused instead on effectiveness. He believed that admiration is a distraction. Respect should be earned naturally through discipline, consistency, and strength of character. Seek mastery, not applause. Musashi believed that conflict reveals truth. He didn't mean violence. He meant challenge, a test of resolve, a confrontation with difficulty, a moment where comfort disappears. In these moments, a person discovers what they truly rely on: their training, their discipline, their instincts, or their excuses. Musashi taught that challenge strips away illusions. What remains is who you really are. And with that knowledge comes the opportunity to grow stronger. Musashi believed that a person should always remain a student. Even near the end of his life, after decades of mastery, he continued learning, observing, and refining his craft. He taught that arrogance stops growth. Curiosity expands it. A beginner mind, he said, is not ignorance, it is openness. It allows a person to learn from every experience, every failure, every unexpected moment. Musashi believed that mastery is not a destination, but an endless path. Musashi wrote that a person should not concern themselves with the judgment of the crowd. He believed the opinions of many are often shaped by fear, confusion, or conformity. Musashi walked his own path, unusual, uncomfortable, and often misunderstood. He believed that a strong person must be willing to stand apart when their direction demands it. He taught that approval is fleeting, but integrity endures. The crowd may not understand your path, but they do not need to. Musashi valued readiness. Not constant tension, but constant awareness. He believed a person should move through life prepared for change, challenge, and opportunity. A ready mind is calm. It does not panic because it is not surprised. Musashi trained until awareness became instinct, a natural part of every moment. He believed that readiness is not paranoia, but presence. A quiet alertness that sees the world clearly. Musashi taught that strength grows when you stop entertaining weakness. Not weakness of the body, but weakness of the mind, excuses, doubt, laziness, avoidance. He believed these habits slowly drain potential and replace discipline with comfort. Musashi cut these tendencies out of his life as strictly as he cut away unnecessary belongings. He believed that when you stop feeding weakness, strength expands naturally. Discipline creates capacity. Capacity becomes skill. Skill becomes power. And it begins with refusing to indulge the weaker voice within. Musashi believed that a person should cultivate the ability to remain calm under pressure. He noticed that pressure exposes people, their fears, their habits, their lack of preparation. But a calm mind keeps options open. Musashi trained himself to slow his thoughts when others panicked, to breathe evenly when others tightened, to see clearly when others froze. He believed that calmness under pressure is not a gift, it is a discipline. A practiced stillness that turns chaos into opportunity. Musashi valued mental flexibility. He wrote that a person must not cling to one plan, one style, one belief, simply because it feels familiar. Rigid minds resist truth. Flexible minds adapt to it. Musashi adjusted to conditions instantly, terrain, opponents, weapons, even unexpected failures. He believed the ability to shift approach without losing purpose is a rare strength. A flexible mind does not break. It bends, redirects, and continues forward. Musashi wrote that a person must understand both strength and softness. He used force when necessary, but used subtlety just as often. He believed that a warrior should know when to press forward and when to yield, when to stand firm and when to shift. Softness was not weakness to him. It was strategy. He believed that softness, used wisely, opens paths that force cannot. Musashi believed that a person should remain grounded even when life becomes uncertain. He saw how unpredictability shakes people, how sudden change disrupts their balance. Musashi trained to keep his footing in all conditions, on uneven terrain, in unfamiliar environments, in shifting circumstances. He believed inner balance creates outer stability. A grounded person moves confidently through uncertainty. Musashi taught that skill grows when effort becomes effortless, not because the work becomes easy, but because the mind stops resisting it. He practiced movements thousands of times until they became natural, until effort faded and instinct took over. He believed mastery is reached when action flows without tension, effort becomes ease, discipline becomes habit. Technique becomes instinct. And instinct, he said, is faster than thought. Musashi believed that a person should avoid acting out of frustration. He watched how frustration makes people reckless, rushing, forcing, pushing too hard. Frustration clouds judgment and blinds strategy. Musashi trained himself to pause internally even while moving externally. He believed that frustration should never guide action. Clarity, not emotion, must lead. Musashi taught that improvement begins with observation. Before changing anything, he studied it, the technique, the opponent, the environment, himself. He believed problems reveal their own solutions if you observe them long enough. Most people act too quickly without understanding. Musashi acted only after seeing clearly. Observation first, action second. Musashi believed that a person must learn to control the space around them, not through force, but through presence. He wrote that awareness expands outward, that a calm, focused mind naturally influences its surroundings. In combat, he used this to unsettle opponents. In life, he used it to stay centered even when circumstances shifted. Musashi taught that presence is a quiet kind of strength, felt more than seen, understood more than spoken. Musashi valued restraint. He believed that power means little if it cannot be held back. He noticed that people often act from the desire to prove something, to show ability, to show superiority, to show confidence. But restraint, he said, reveals true mastery. The ability to act forcefully and choose not to, the ability to win without striking, the ability to speak and choose silence instead. To Musashi, restraint was a higher form of strength. Musashi wrote that a person should not fear taking the unconventional path. He lived outside the norms of his era, traveling alone, training alone, teaching himself techniques others considered strange. But his results validated his methods. Musashi believed that tradition should be respected, but not worshipped. If a new approach works better, use it. He taught that innovation often looks strange at first until it becomes the new standard. Musashi believed that clarity increases when life is kept simple. He avoided unnecessary commitments, unnecessary possessions, unnecessary obligations. Not because he rejected the world, but because he wanted to move through it without burden. He wrote that simplicity frees the mind, it sharpens priorities, strengthens resolve, and reveals what truly matters. Simplicity, he said, is not lack. It is focus. Musashi taught that a person should remain adaptable even in success. He saw how victory makes people rigid, attached to a single method, a single habit, a single identity. But the world changes. Conditions change. Opponents change. Musashi changed with them. He believed success is not a reason to stop evolving, it is a reason to evolve further. Adaptability, he said, must continue even when things are going well. Miyamoto Musashi lived a life defined by discipline, clarity, and purpose. His teachings were forged through conflict, tempered by solitude, and strengthened by constant reflection. Across all his words runs a single thread, that mastery begins within. Strength of mind creates strength of action. Simplicity creates clarity. Discipline creates freedom. Musashi taught not just how to fight, but how to live. As you leave these teachings behind, remember the principles that guided him. Be honest with yourself. Cut away the unnecessary, stay adaptable, act with intention, remain calm under pressure. And continue growing even when no one is watching. Musashi's wisdom endures because it points inward toward the discipline, the stillness, and the strength every person can cultivate. Thank you for listening. Until next time.